Hello and welcome to day 5, where we will challenge unhelpful thought patterns. There are 3 key points for this episode. Number 1 is to find out what cognitive distortions are and how they lead to unhelpful thought patterns. The second one is to understand the types of unhelpful cognitive distortions that you tend to lean towards. And the third one, we will explore practical strategies to counter unhelpful thought patterns with more positive ones. So let's start with how can negative thoughts affect your life? Can you relate to this? Have you ever experienced that moment when a single setback triggers a wave of anxiety, and before you know it, your mind is a whirlwind of negative thoughts? Well, we've all been there, so let's unravel why and how to break free. Patterns of negative thinking, often referred to as cognitive distortions, can trap us in a cycle of irrational beliefs and emotions, leading us to perceive reality in a skewed and harmful way. And this is known as cognitive distortion. It's as if you have a negative interpretation of the environment around you, like viewing the world through a cloudy lens that magnifies unfavorable aspects. And this distorted perception reinforces negative thought patterns and feelings of anxiety and sadness. These skewed thoughts hinder our ability to adeptly manage stress, thus creating a cycle that can be hard to break. These cognitive distortions appear in various forms. One example is catastrophizing, where minor issues are blown out of proportion and worst-case scenarios dominate thoughts. Overgeneralization is another, attaching the outcome of one negative event to all similar situations, regardless of their relevance. And mind reading is another distortion, where you assume you know what others are thinking, often assuming the worst. And that's the most common one. So, how can you tackle these distortions? Have you ever heard of the power of positive thinking? Well, in many ways, that power holds truth. Our mindset is powerful, and whether positive or negative, holds the potential to significantly shape our well-being. By consciously adopting a positive outlook, you can tap into this potential and do wonders for your well-being. In today's episode, you will learn how to tackle negative thought patterns and cultivate a positive mindset. So, let's begin by identifying what cognitive distortions look like for you with this exercise. So, you will get to know different thinking errors or cognitive distortions and examples. So you go through the exercise to reflect on and then rate the extent to which you recognize yourself in each distortion. On a piece of paper or on a device, just take note of the distortions that you agree or strongly agree with. Alright? So just to be clear before we start, I'm gonna give you some distortions or examples, and then you will just have to answer strongly applies to you, doesn't apply to you, or doesn't apply to you at all. Alright? And you take note of the distortions that you agree or strongly agree with. So let's go with the first one. Catastrophizing is when we always assume the worst of something or someone. An example: if I don't go to the after-work drinks today, my colleagues will never invite me again. So, strongly applies to you, doesn't apply to you, or doesn't apply to you at all. Second distortion: polarized thinking is when we think in extremes and ignore gray areas. Example: if I don't find the perfect partner, then I will be alone forever. Strongly applies to you, doesn't apply to you, doesn't apply to you at all. The third one, overgeneralization, involves taking one situation or thought and applying it all situations, even when they are not directly related. Example: I'm not good at this new hobby I just picked up. I'm terrible at everything and I will never succeed in any new endeavor. Strongly applies to you, doesn't apply to you, doesn't apply to you at all. Next distortion. Mind reading describes how we make assumptions about other people's opinions or believe we know what they are thinking. Example: the new colleague doesn't like me, I just know it. Strongly applies to you, doesn't apply to you, doesn't apply to you at all. And last distortion. Discounting the positive occurs when we explain away or ignore positive things. Example: I was only asked to lead the workshop because Amy isn't here, not because I'm good at doing workshops. Strongly applies to you, doesn't apply to you, doesn't apply to you at all. So which cognitive distortions do you tend toward the most? Do you feel that you've gained a clearer grasp of how cognitive distortions can impact your everyday experiences? So be easy on yourself when you recognize that your thoughts are a bit distorted or negative. Everyone has these thoughts sometimes, and the goal isn't to eliminate all negative thinking. That wouldn't be realistic. But with a little time and practice, you can learn to lighten up your thoughts and enjoy a healthier view of life. Alright? So now we will tackle those thoughts and see how we can find helpful alternatives. So, how can you tackle your negative thinking patterns? Now that you have a good understanding of how your thought patterns are distorting the way you move through the world, let's explore some practical strategies to tackle these distorted thoughts, alright? So number 1, signal words. One way to recognize problematic thoughts is to pay attention to signal words. So these include I must, I should, and absolute generalizations such as never, always, completely, none, no one, or everyone. For example, having the thought, I have to do this or that instead of I want to do this or that. Or even phrases like no one likes me instead of that one person may not like me. The second one is to putting it to the test. A way to combat such negative thinking is to directly challenge your thoughts to see how true or accurate they are. This is like being an investigator examining facts and data to test how good your hunches are. To do a good job at investigating ourselves, we will need to find the signs that point to the worry being a valid one. For example, consider the thought, I forgot my laptop and missed my bus, so I'm completely incompetent. Investigate this thought by asking yourself if forgetting your laptop and missing the bus are truly indicative of incompetence. Are there any instances in your life when you've made mistakes but they didn't define your competence? Alright? The third one is to change your perspective. Imagine a close friend told you, I forgot my laptop and missed my bus, so I'm completely incompetent. What would you say to your friend? would you agree they are completely incompetent? Or would you suggest they were just having a bad morning? You see how you can change your perspective? And the last one is fast forwarding. Imagine yourself traveling 6 months into the future. How would your future self feel about the current situation? Would the thoughts still be as meaningful to you? It is often the case that something can feel very important to us in the current moment, but quickly loses meaning once some time has passed. Alright? So, just to sum up, there's signal words, putting it to the test, then change your perspective, and then fast forwarding. Now it's your turn to try addressing cognitive distortions and find an alternative. So, think of a recurring unhelpful thought that you've had and use it to follow this process, alright? First, which thought do you want to check? For example, a time you were catastrophizing when you missed a deadline for a project and thought, oh, this is a disaster, I'm going to get fired. Or a time you were mind reading by having a friend cancel plans and you thought, they must not want to spend time with me anymore. So once you found the thought that you want to check, on a scale from 0% to 100%, how strongly are you convinced that your thought is true? Then, what makes you think your thought is true? What are reasons why your thought may not be true? And now, what might be a helpful alternative thought? And how strongly are you convinced that your new thought is true? And finally, when you tell yourself your new thought, how does that change how you feel? How do you want to act now? Alright, so if it's not easy for you today, that's completely normal. You can write down all of these questions on a paper, and whenever you have a thought, like in the following days, consciously pay attention to your thoughts and see the ones that you can work with and use these questions. The more regularly you do this exercise, the more sustainably you let your old, well-trodden and not so helpful path of thought fade away and pave new, more helpful path for your thoughts. Alright? And this is not only good for your handling of negative emotions, but it can also ensure a more stable, positive mood in the long run. Alright, so this is the end of day 5. Congratulations! The 3 key learnings to remember here is that negative thought patterns can lead to increased anxiety and feelings of sadness and stress. The second one is that not all of your thoughts are accurate. And the third one, we learned how to generate a helpful alternative thought through a change of perspective that can help to tackle negative thought patterns into positive ones. Alright, so I hope you find this episode insightful, and I will see you tomorrow for day 6, where we will learn how to thrive with social anxiety. See you next time in day 6. Bye for now.